Hoyle for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much. This question is for Dr. Kariva. As we've seen, and certainly we've seen in the Pacific Northwest, the gutting of federal agencies without any concern about the importance of the jobs that are being done. This is being done in a very non-strategic way, and we've seen lots of effects. Could you speak to how these firings at the Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service would affect the ability of services to identify, interpret, and carry out the basic science necessary to make informed ESA decisions?
Sure, I'll be glad to. So most of my experience with these federal agencies is in the field. And what is happening, you have to realize there's field biologists out there every day collecting information on water quality, how inflammable the vegetation is, keeping track of our environment. I know from our collaborators in Southern California that one of the cuts that have been made is with the credit card limits. You're a field biologist and you can't buy equipment like a water quality sampler, and it hampers, even without the firing, it hampers the ability to collect baseline information. It's like a fire alarm in your house. It's the field biologists that are the fire alarm for our planet, and we need them out there every day.
Thank you. So it's vitally important that we get this information, that field biologists are able to get this information. Can you talk about where we get certain sources of information? What is the best available science, and why is mandating the use of certain sources of data a good or a bad idea?
Best available scientists, sometimes when I hear that, I think that it's what's my most favorite science. I like to think of it as the weight of evidence. Science is continually evolving. The best available science changes from year to year. It's interesting with my wolf colleague here, the wolf recovery goals were set before we had any genetic information. We couldn't even collect DNA and sequence it like we can now. If you sample wolves from 90 to 150 years ago and look at their genetics and compare them to the wolves today, they've lost half their variability. That doesn't show up in numbers, but losing half the variability in genetics is like losing half of your stock portfolio and just having a much diminished option. So the best available science changes from year to year, and it has to be updated, and it's really peer-reviewed science that is the best available science.
So with your background and your studies, what do you feel is the best approach?
I didn't catch that last phrase.
What do you feel is the best approach for addressing wolves and through the perspective of the Endangered Species Act?
I think the best approach for handling wolves right now is updating the science, both the genetics and what's going around. Think about it. There were 500,000 to 2 million wolves in the country before. Now we're down to 6,000 to 8,000. The 5-year plan, for delisting in only 5 years. In the last 5 years, we killed 3,500 wolves. Down to 6,000 to 8,000 wolves. In the last 5 years, we killed 3,500 wolves when the population used to be at a minimum 500,000. So that we would update the science, and we would also take into account, our recovery should take into account livelihoods of the ranchers and that, and we would have a management plan that accounted for wolves and accounted for ranching. You could do that with the best available science. You could have both.
Great. Thank you so much, and I yield back.